All right. Well, it looks like it is just about 2 o'clock Mountain Time. So let's get started. And let's get started with, ooh, there I am. I love that I'm always shocked to see myself. Like, you'd think at some point I would know that I was going to appear when I hit start video, but apparently every time it takes me by surprise. So yeah, well, welcome everyone. This is DES 314, which is Advanced Color Theory. And we are in our second session of our first week of our 11th mod together. And today does have the fortuitous date of being October 31st. So happy Halloween, everyone. If today is a day that you celebrate, hopefully, hopefully you're not watching this video on the day, but hopefully you had a really good time celebrating. You stacked up on candy, you had great costumes and enjoyed parties and all that sort of thing. I love Halloween. I'm all for it. I'm also in the midst of writing a dissertation and working and trying to stay sane. So this year I'm not doing anything but, wearing a cardigan and dressing up like a writer and a teacher and, the usual daily stuff. But yeah, I think it's a fun holiday in a lot of different ways. So also hope everybody had the chance to eat candy and or will be soon eating candy. At least have some sugar in your future. I don't know about you guys. I don't have any children of my own, but I do have a small Yorkshire Terrier, Ruby Joy, who I told you guys about yesterday. And for whatever reason, I'm thinking it's the holiday. It's just the general spirit of things. She is like hyperactive like crazy today. And so I feel like I have 4 nieces and nephews who are all going to be kind of bouncing off the walls very soon. So I feel like I'm getting like I'm having some parental empathy because for whatever reason I have a Yorkie who's apparently on like a sugar high. So if you hear anything as we're talking, just ignore it. Like, she's fine. I don't know what she's doing, but she's a little bit in the hyperactive state. And I told her the plans, we're teaching, we need it quiet. Now is a great time for you to nap. She just kind of looked at me and kind of turned her head and then went back to running around in circles and barking. So who knows the mind of a small dog, but it's always kind of fun. All right, well, we will turn off the camera now and jump into the slides. But as always, good to see everybody. Wouldn't it have been so fun if I had turned on the camera and I had like a shocking pink wig or something? Another year, missed it, but maybe next year, or maybe next session when I can finally get it together to get a costume. Keep it when you least expect it. All right, so we're gonna turn this off. But yeah, good to see you guys. All right, so I nailed it. Thank you. Yeah, I thought well, I guess you couldn't see the full, and that was if you're watching the video, that was a comment that came in through the chat box. I can't see the full thing, but I do, yeah. I have a cardigan that channels kind of like 1950s grandfatherly writer is what I'm hoping. And the idea is that, I don't know if you guys ever dress for what you are trying to do, but I have the theory that if you look like the task you need to accomplish, it will make the task easier to accomplish. I think it's, I'm thinking it plays out somewhat. See, I'm dressed as a student. Yes, excellent. It's all about the ways we can get and keep ourselves motivated. And hey, that's, half the battle often. All right, so here is the agenda that we have for today. We are going to do just a bit of review since I know you may be like, well, I just watched that session, or that was just yesterday. I don't know if you guys can relate, but sometimes yesterday feels like 2 weeks ago. So I'm a big fan of reviewing just because I know I don't tend to keep things in my mind very long. And so I feel like everybody is the same as me. But if you're not, it's always a good chance for you to say, "Hey, look at, I know it's," and kind of show off in that way as well. So we're going to do a little bit of review. Then we're going to talk about visual hierarchy and kind of what that means. Kind of that in itself might be a review. But all of this with visual hierarchy, with color and composition, is really going to lead us to our assignment for this week, which is creating a set of business cards for 3 different artists from 3 different art historical periods. And you may be like, business cards, easy. In some ways, yes. In other ways, I think it's very valuable to kind of circle back to something that might be seen as kind of a basic task, which is creating business cards. So circle back to it, especially as a 300 level student, kind of knowing what you know now that you may or may not have known the last time you were tasked with creating business cards. So I think it's going to be an interesting thing to kind of just dig a little bit deeper into hierarchy, into compositional principles, and then of course to add the magic that is color into the whole mix. So yes, that's kind of how we're gonna spend our day. All right. So here's some learning objectives that are going to guide us. First one, describe the ways that the Newtonian prismatic idea of color production was in fact a precursor to the RYB color model. Number 2, identify how color has been used to define visual composition in 3 past art history movements. Number 3, identify how color has been used to convey emotion in 3 past art history movements. Number 4, define hues, tints, tones, and shades of color. And number 5, describe warm and cool colors and color schemes. So 5 good learning objectives. And I hope that everyone has or soon will be having the opportunity to say the words Newtonian prismatic idea of color production. Let me just say it's probably a little bit late right now since today is Halloween. I should have mentioned this yesterday, but this is a great thing to bring up in Halloween party talk as you're looking at, flashlights and shiny, I was going to say shiny things, but no, more like kind of blinky strobe lights or things that might be present in kind of a haunted party arena. Great time to bring up, Newton's idea of prisms and color and the ideas around it. So I should have missed the opportunity again, but at some point, Thanksgiving is coming, so we will we'll bring that up again. Good party conversation. All right, so let's do a little bit of review. I want to just acknowledge now that we have 1 student who is here in person, so that means that everybody else who is watching via video, you are going to really have to put on your thinking caps as well, because you're going to be tasked with filling in these blanks as well, kind of engaging in these ideas. So in our first session, we talked about what is color theory, and we came up. Well, we didn't come up with. I found a pretty good, robust, meaty definition of just what color theory means. We thought that was great, but we also thought it was kind of long. Well, I will say we as in I, but I'm sure you guys agreed with me. So we were able to further distill the definition of color theory down just a bit. So we have color theory really is guiding principles for something. So if you're here or if you're watching along via video, just think to yourself, guiding principles for what? What was that second blank that we talked about, that we brought up? What are these principles guiding us toward? And just a couple seconds, kind of see if you remember in your mind. Okay, if you were thinking, actually, let me use the annotation tools. That's what I was thinking of. If you were thinking of it's a little like we're playing a Wheel of Fortune. I should have typed it in without any vowels. Harmonious output. You would be correct. Oops. Oh no, where did it go? So yeah, so color theory really is guiding principles for harmonious output. So as we talked about yesterday in class, graphic design really is visual communication. And so because of that, you want to be very mindful as to how you're using colors, because you want to make sure that what you're communicating through the color is cohesive and is connected to what you're communicating through every other piece of the design. So, for example, if you're communicating something like super happy, super energetic, super friendly, whatever, and your color scheme is like brown, gray, and like spruce green, probably not going to get a ton of energy from that. So you want to, kind of align what you're using with your message, and in so doing, ensuring that the communication message that's coming is really harmonious, meaning it has harmony, meaning it feels like it is connected to what it needs to be. So color theory, guiding principles for harmonious outputs. All right, so here's our long definition. You can look at this and say, yeah, the shorter one's way easier to remember. At least that's what I think. But just to read this, color theory is a set of guiding principles that can be used to create harmonious color combinations. These ideas are represented in a variety of diagrams, so color wheels, triangles, and charts that help designers understand color interactions, select and combine colors, and construct pleasing and effective color palettes. So, guiding principles for harmonious output. So next thing for review, who was Newton and who really cares? So I won't, well, I guess I could give you a couple seconds and you can think who was Newton and who really cares, but I think instead we'll just kind of jump in. So just as a reminder, refresher, remember Sir Isaac Newton was the one who played around with prisms and color and beams of light and such. Let's see. We care because he was the dude who discovered light is made up of color. Exactly. That's why we care. But yeah, so he was kind of playing with what is color really? What is light really? And so he was playing with prisms, he was refracting, and he discovered that even though white light looks white, if you refract it, it's actually all of the different colors kind of coming together. And so because of that, he was able to find that you can mix differing light beams of light, and different colors emerge from there. And so then the painters, the fine artists, said, "Hey, I wonder if that would also work with these paints that we have, that we're using." And the answer was yes. And thus was born the color wheel. So that was like the extremely condensed, like Lisa Cliff Notes version of how it all happened. But it is a really cool process. And I would encourage everybody, if you haven't, or if you were thinking about, kind of not doing it for the week, rethink that thinking. And definitely be sure to check out the course media and just get a little bit more of an overview about, how this happened, how this worked, how your eyeball actually works to see these things, and just what a complex and crazy yet also kind of amazing system it does happen to be. So why do we care about these things? We care about them because they're interesting. No, beyond that, we really care about them because as designers, we work with color theoretically on a daily basis, and so it's kind of like if you're a chef, you kind of want to know where your ingredients came from. You want to know like the farmers, and you want to know kind of where everything originated from. Same thing if you're a designer, you want to kind of know where these tools that we play with every day came from. And it's not because, you know, you're gonna earn a ton more money or whatever, but it's just because you want to know where you came from as a um, kind of as a practitioner, and you know, just being connected into kind of this larger story really shows that, you know, hey, we're kind of a part of something that's, you know, pretty amazing if you trace it back. So I'm a huge proponent of the design community, the larger design network, and so hopefully you guys too are starting to realize that, like, wow, this is, you know, this is a pretty cool thing I'm in. Like, it's not just, you know, I sit in the basement and I make something. It's like I'm, you know, part of this heritage, and it's kind of a cool club to be part of in many ways. Let's see. It is also interesting to know how many modern devices this one discovery led to. Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, he did this, and then, you know, things kind of snowballed from there. And, you know, 300 plus years later, here we are. And I always think, whenever I learn about people that, you know, made these really big discoveries in the past, like, oh my gosh, if you knew, like, you think this is cool because of, you know, this tiny thing, like 300 years later people will be talking about you because it's an online program and like in a classroom where we're fully, you know, geographically distributed, and we're all looking at screens that are emitting light, which is like the colors that you were doing in your prism. So craziness, and also just so cool how it all connects together. All right, so why should you know Sir Isaac Newton? Clearly because he was kind of one of our design ancestors. And do I have a picture of him? Oh, unfortunately, I don't. He would also make a very interesting Halloween costume because, like many people who discovered things in the past, if the paintings are accurate, he was a little bit of an eccentric. So those always make the best costumes. Anything you can get like a powdered wig with is always good in my book. Let's see how hard he had to fight to just voice his discovery. Yeah, exactly. And it wasn't like oh, great idea, you contributed. It was like, okay, well, now you discovered this one sciencey thing, and no, we're gonna, nobody's gonna believe you for a long time. Which, yeah, I mean, again, is kind of cool just to see what happened in history, and then, you know, kind of live in contemporary places too, and, you know, kind of see everything that's happening. So very interesting. All right, so we have Newton, who was playing with light, and then um, painters kind of picked that up, and then kind of paradoxically, we're back as designers. I feel like we're back much more in a light-based system, just as far as, you know, how we tend to work in our day-to-day lives. So here's the traditional color wheel. This is what this is what I know I tend to think of, and I tend to teach quite a bit more. I start here. I don't start at the light rays, but it's just good to know that RYB. So here are these little R. Oops, that would be Y, I guess. RB. This is kind of, you know, where it started, and then these other colors kind of branched out and came from there. So just a little heads up here. That's probably an appropriate time to do it as any. Let me make my line with a bit bigger. So the color wheel, which is what this is, can generally be split into kind of two zones that happen right about here and here. Generally, if you could kind of fold it in half. So these are called one set of colors, and these are called another set of colors. So if you are here, or if you are watching via video, just think to yourself, color A, this quadrant, what are these colors called? And I'll just put a little line through the center here. They have kind of like a general demarcation. And then what is section B? What are those colors called? So just a couple seconds, think, what is that? What is that? What are those words? Okay, so it looks like, according to the chat box, A is warm colors and B is cool colors, and yes, that would be completely correct. So we're gonna do a little bit of a review of different ways to speak about color. But one kind of major classification that we can make right off the bat is between warm colors and cool colors. So the easy way to remember it, warm colors are kind of like fire, except for the inconvenient like blue flames of something that's really hot. So we'll ignore that. But like traditional fire, like traditional sun, so kind of yellows, oranges, reds, that sort of thing. And then cool colors tend to be more darker, so like blues, purples, greens, and anything that feels a little bit more calming. So yeah, so energetic tends to be warm, and then cooling, calming, etc. Tends to be cool. So think, I have a feeling, I haven't reviewed the assessment to give you guys any heads ups as to things you might need to know. I know everything is in the course media, but I think there are a couple questions like, if you were working for a relaxing spa, what sort of colors would you give them? And the answer probably would be a bit more on the cool side than on the warm side, mostly because like a spa with like bright red, bright red rooms to get a facial or a massage or something, maybe not the best idea. So, if you have any questions that are kind of that nature, I would say always think first and foremost, like, is this something that is more energizing or is this something that is more relaxing? And then kind of, go back and forth, and choose your colors kind of accordingly in that way. All right, so let's move right along. So again, we have the mixed palette, how things kind of go from there. And it's kind of interesting because we're going to do just a little bit of a quick review of, as I said, some terminology. I feel like we could almost do it just by looking at this color palette, but we won't. This painter's palette, I should say, but we won't because I didn't think of that till just now. So we have slides for review, but interesting stuff to see that, see how the terminology really is played out in kind of a practical way. And I do know that we have many fine artists in our course and in our program. So if you have a background in painting of any sort, I would, kind of challenge you as you're listening to these color theory sessions, think back to when you were painting and, just think back to that physical process and see if you can, see if you can bring something from what we're talking about in class in a very digital way into your own physical painting past, or even if you're still kind of currently dabbling in physical painting, see what you can come up with in that way too, because it's a cool thing. I have a background in watercolor painting, and I did a little bit of acrylics. That's kind of what I dabbled in as well. And so it's always cool to get out like the real stuff and mix, because if you are a painter, you'll get it. But there's just something so cool about, putting two things physically together and seeing what happens. I love Adobe in many ways, but somehow moving a color slider just feels a little different than, taking a brush that's loaded with a color and like smashing it into something else and, mixing a color that way. So it's an interesting process back and forth. Again, I wish we were all present together so we could do a little painting. If you have the opportunity to, in the next 4 weeks, definitely do it. Messy, but good. All right, so here are two kind of what we're seeing as somewhat polar opposites, especially in the time of Newton. And I would say that still kind of continue to be one of those interesting things that I think people just don't think about anymore. But once they do, it tends to be a little bit like, I don't know. And again, this could be interesting kind of party conversation. So color is in A, an object, or B, in light itself. So how would you guys kind of frame it? How do you kind of feel about these things? Okay, so it looks like light itself is kind of winning in the chat box. Yeah, exactly. There's yeah, so an interesting debate. I don't know. I'm personally still kind of on the fence. I still feel like objects do have some inherent color, but then I also feel like light plays a huge role. So, and I know that when it's dark, everything looks dark. So I don't know. Maybe not. Who knows? But again, just something really interesting. Really interesting to think about. Let's see. That is what gets it for me. Yeah. Huh. Yeah, I mean, we need light to see, and does that mean that objects then also need light to have color? And what's that whole structure like? Light changes the way things so much look. Yeah, yeah, things look so much. Yeah, very cool. So yeah, again, just an interesting thing to think about. This is good. This is good 300 level stuff where you're kind of are thinking about you're thinking about theories even more than like how how do you make a thing, but even more kind of why does making a thing matter, and what's the deeper stuff behind it. So cool stuff. Your brain is faster than your fingers. That's a good day, for sure. When your brain is firing, always a win. Okay, so we're going to do just a little terminology for color. So again, if you are watching or if you are here and have the ability to type, look at this. We have this big tube of pure something that's coming out. This is what we refer to as kind of the most basic construct of color. So do you guys remember what this is? And again, a couple seconds, just think, okay, this is this. So what could that be? Okay, looks like someone is typing hue. And yes, excellent. Yeah, this is a tube of red paint, but it also is representative of the most basic way to discuss color, which is the pure hue of, I guess, of a color. So pure hue. So when you add white to a pure hue, something happens. And do you guys remember, what is that occurrence? So the color gets progressively lighter. It gets progressively kind of desaturated. So the intensity of the color tends to wane. And what's interesting is that oftentimes other colors get formed. Like here you can see pink shows up. And in some ways you're like, well, wait, does that mean pink isn't a pure hue? Pink is a pure hue as well, but it's just as you trace colors through these different pathways, different colors emerge that are kind of like other colors. So, all right, looks like this is tint. Yep, and that would be correct. So when you add white to a pure hue, you come up with the tint of that hue. All right, so this is adding gray to the hue, and what's happening here? So when we add gray, we define the somethings of a color. Okay, so it looks like tone. Exactly. So tone is with gray, and then we have one more thing. Oops, if I can change it. And this is yes, you guys are on today. This is going to be shade. So tint is white, tone is gray, shade is black. And does anyone remember as well kind of the interesting relationship that exists between tones and shades? So all are but it's not always a reciprocal relationship. Okay, so let's see. They look a lot alike. Yep. Yeah, exactly, because all tones naturally tend to replicate themselves in shades, but it's not reciprocal because all shades don't always replicate tones. So all tones are shades, but not all shades are tones. Exactly. And so I don't know if this would quite make the list for good party conversation, but it is kind of interesting. And it is interesting to know about, especially when you are coming up with color palettes. And when you are working with, I think one student had mentioned yesterday, if you're thinking about refreshing a brand or a color palette for a brand or whatever, instead of going completely to new colors, you might just go with shades, tints, or tones of the color and see what impact that has. Or even if you're doing kind of a complex layout and you want to put in like a pull quote or something in an interesting color, if you are using, bright colors somewhere in your layout, and the bright color isn't appropriate for whatever your application is, usually a tint of that, so that the color kind of plus white, kind of desaturated, tends to be a pretty good fit. Let's see, shades tend to be darker earlier than tones. Yep, yeah, because shades end in black, and so they tend to make that jump more quickly, as opposed to tones. And if you're like, ooh, this is tricky, this is tricky terminology, it's kind of just one of those things that eventually you get. I gave you a great like shade tree analogy. I think that it's more you kind of work with it, and then it tends to work itself out. And again, it's something that works really well with paint, but in the digital aspect, it's not quite as easy. That said, we did do an exercise yesterday using the blend tool in Illustrator. So I would definitely recommend that you guys try that if you haven't, just to kind of get into the software, get a little bit more experience using the blend tool, and just trying extending these colors, kind of putting them through their paces. The other thing too I think would be kind of interesting is that, I don't know about you guys, but my computer, I think I mentioned this yesterday, my software just rolled over to 2018. And so I feel like it's always good to just do a couple like low stakes menial things in software once it updates, so you can just kind of remember where stuff is, because Adobe is a tricky little one in that things always move slightly, or like the shape of buttons changes, and it's we're we're always much smarter than the software, perhaps. But it does take a little bit of kind of figuring out, where stuff goes and whatever. So good things to try. And it's stuff that you want to figure out when you're not stressed or like under a time crunch. When you're stressed and under a time crunch, it's just annoying. Whereas when you can kind of explore a little bit, then it's just, like an interesting thing to discover. So take time to discover if possible. All right, so we are going to next talk about taking care of business, especially in regard to business cards. But before we do that, I'm actually going to get out of here and get into our classroom so we can see just why we are doing this. And where is that classroom? There it is. Oh, this is another cool thing that we're going to look at, but we're not going to look at it yet. But you can watch it load to just kind of further your... But yeah, bending light, online prisms, it is a thing. Who knew? Okay, so let me just log in. As we are here, and as it is a Tuesday, I'm just going to do one kind of commercial, and that is for the IU graphic arts community, as well as the different student groups that we have here at IU. So if you did not know this, every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Mountain Time, we do have a gathering. It's an extracurricular student group and club. And on, I think, weeks 1 and 3 are GA Design Club, and then week 2 is Coffee with Creatives, and then week 4 is the AIGA student group. So it's really cool stuff. If you haven't checked them out, kind of the focus from now till the end of the year for Design Club is how to actually get paid to do design work. So picking up interesting small freelance projects that are totally doable for when you are still in school. And you guys, as 300 levelers, not only are these projects, potentially totally doable, but you also have the skills to do it. It's always a little tricky when, you have a 100 level student and they're like all gung-ho to do something, but they've only opened up Photoshop like twice. But you guys have, you've been through a lot, and kind of how things work and what's going on. So I would really encourage you guys, if you have time on Wednesday, so 5 p.m. Mountain time, so whatever that is in your time zone, if you have time to really check this out and just kind of see what's going on here, because it's cool stuff, it's cool community. And Sean Childers Gray, who's in charge of it, is amazing. He does such a nice job. So you just click on the graphic of whatever you want to learn more about, and then there's a link that will take you to a Zoom space. And then, hey, look at who did it. I guess I didn't do that mod. I did it one of these mods. Here it is. Yay! Building a Design Network. That was me in mod 5. But yeah, so there's recordings of past stuff, and then also what's coming up this week. So pretty cool stuff. And it's only an hour, so again, that's a nice, kind of a nice fit. All right, so that was your commercial for IU Graphic Arts Clubs. Every Wednesday, 5 p.m., you get to hang out, do some cool stuff, and learn some interesting skills, which is always good. All right, so let's go to our assignment for this week. And see where we are headed for this. Okay, so we're not going to go over the specifics of the assignment yet. We will do that in a little bit. But basically, the reason why we are going to be taking care of business, especially in the element of business cards, is that for your assignment, you're going to be creating 3 business cards for historic artists using color schemes for each drawn directly from their paintings. So you're going to kind of find 3 artists and pretend like they are your clients, that they've hired you, and create their business cards for them, and kind of see what happens through that interaction. So business cards it is. A couple things I would recommend too before I even get into the kind of lecture where I present some things to think about, content, what have you, is you guys have, it's probably, you're going to be tired of me saying this, but you've been around for a bit, so you're kind of familiar with things. You kind of, you should have your own kind of process for what you're doing with design. You should have, your steps, the ordering, kind of your flow, your system. But what I find is really helpful is especially, I've been practicing for over 10 years now, but sometimes I like when I'm given a challenge like this to just go onto Google and to just do a search on like how to do something. And so for this one, whoa, this looks like our background for the GA community. Crazy how that works. But yeah, so in prepping for this session, I was thinking like, if I were actually going to be doing this task myself, like if I had been hired to design business cards for an artist, like what would I do? And I thought, one thing I would kind of do is just Google how do you design or like graphic design for business cards and just see what comes up. And it's kind of just cool to see what people are putting out there right now, like how people are saying you should design, and the kind of inspiration that's coming with it, and all of that. So I would encourage you guys, even if you're like, I've designed 1 million business cards, I know what to do, just go on Google and just like 5 or 10 minutes of kind of searching around and see how websites are telling people they should have their business cards be designed. And a good thing is, you get kind of inspiration from looking at visuals, but also if you have clients that are coming to you asking you for these things, there's a fairly good chance that they're going to have first said, well, maybe I could just do it myself. And so they may have Googled, how do you design business cards? And so, they're kind of seeing these things, these ideas are kind of coming loaded into their minds. And so I feel like it's always good to stay one step ahead of your clients, just so you kind of know where they're coming from. So it's a very real temptation to say, I come up with the creative ideas, I am that person. And I think to some extent we are as designers, but I think that we do ourselves a disservice when we feel like we have to come up with all the ideas. I think it's very good if we just kind of, if we look around a bit more and we kind of see what other people are doing, just to see the landscape and kind of see what else is out there. Like, yeah, this is an awesome card. Yeah, I know, isn't it so cool? It's just a specialty print technique. Like last mod, this would have been a genius card to show. But yeah, kind of cool. Let's see, I have the ideas and your job as a client is to love them. Exactly. And you can see how long that's going to last, like pretty much now. But so anyway, so I was kind of just browsing like, okay, yeah, I think I would actually do this. And then I thought, wow, how cool is it to have letterpress? And then I thought, why couldn't we, make our cards look like they have letterpress too? So we're going to jump into Photoshop and do something kind of cool. But again, look at it, a card that's a cheese grater. What? It hurts to look at, but I love it. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So lots of cool stuff. Keep going. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, it's just, I think it's fun to just know what you could do with something, and just come up with creative stuff. Like nobody's going to make this for this assignment because it's a chair, but just this idea that you could have a card that you could make and it could turn into something. Yeah, why not? This one grows hair. Turns into a plant, 24 hours, 4 days. So, yeah. Recycle old cards. I love this idea with kind of the sticker coming through. So, yeah. So again, just check it out, see what's happening, and you never know just what kind of ideas might come into your head. And a lot of times too, I feel like, we have, when we're working for a client, when we're working on a project, whatever, we kind of tend to see everything through that project's eyes, and it's like, well, this wouldn't be a good fit, so therefore I'm going to ignore it. You never know though, like sometimes it may not be right for this project, but in a future project it might be something, it might be something that would be really helpful to you. So it's always good to have more ideas, I feel like, because more is more. Especially when you're staring at that blank document and you're like, I got nothing. If you have this, kind of backlog of stuff, it's very good. See, this is a double-edged sword. I could look around for a day or two. Yes. Yeah, we might go to Pinterest as well, which is, kind of the dark hole of awesomeness. But yeah, so moral of the story is just do a quick search. And I think to build this, oh yeah, here. Excuse me, what I did for this Google search, it's like nothing. Designing a business card. I typed it in and I said, hey, I wonder what comes up. And look here's 10 things to look at. So we have the internet. The internet is amazing, and we really have to be good about leveraging it, because this is like the secret weapon that, we didn't have before. And then you can see the cute Google Doodle. Always good as well. Okay, so business cards, what to think about, how to think about them, and especially in the context of this assignment, kind of how to think about that. So let's go back into our, oops. This would be the raw file of the slides. Here are the real slides. And yes, full screen. Okay, so a couple things to think about when you are designing a business card, and this is now going to be kind of the Lisa um, the Lisa approach to business card design. I feel like when you are designing something that is so small as a business card, so 3.5 inches by 2 inches, it's a tiny thing. Every piece that you put on it is going to be you need to be extremely strategic about what you choose, about how you combine it, and about where you put it, so that you really can maximize your communication potential. So it's very important in design in general to ask yourself questions about, what font are you using, what is your overall layout, what is your overall style. But it's especially important in business cards because business cards are so tiny. So we're going to, like I said, we're going to do an overall demo. I'm going to kind of walk you through how I would approach this assignment. But I would encourage you to just from the get-go, really be thinking about font, really be thinking about layout, and then really be thinking about kind of the general overall style. So remember, graphic design is visual communication. So we want to make sure that these three things are all on the same page, literally, but that they're all kind of trending toward the same final message, so that what you're creating, what you're putting them on, kind of how you're using them overall, really has a good cohesive look to it. It's not feeling confusing. And again, super, super important because the size of a business card is just so tiny that if one element, so if one of these three is just a little bit off, your whole card is going to feel very confusing, or it's going to feel like, somebody made it who doesn't know design, and, the person that receives it, or the person in theory that would receive it, is just going to say, this has nothing for me, like this makes no sense. So we don't want that to be the case. So from the beginning, we have to really think about font, we have to think about layout, and we have to think about overall style that we're producing. Okay, so how you might do that in the case of this project, and it's certainly in the case of any kind of client design relationship, is really think about interviewing, in this case, really think about interviewing your artist. So when we go onto the website and we're looking through different pieces from the Museum of Modern Art, or the Metropolitan, wherever we're going to head for this assignment, really look through the artists that are shown, and then kind of use your imagination a little bit and think about how it would be to, once you look at their work, to sit down with them and to, ask them a couple questions. So things like, what sort of font would you like? Or, are you into more of kind of an open layout? Are you into kind of more of like a full layout? Do you like more decorative stuff? Do you like kind of more streamlined, simple stuff? And you may be thinking like, this is kind of silly. Like this is an artist who isn't even alive anymore. That may be the case, but just the act of kind of critically engaging and using your imagination is really powerful because it can help you get into the space of that artist, and it will help you kind of look at their work with a little bit of a critical lens, so you can kind of see what they were doing, see why they did it, and see how that might speak to what you're creating and help to overall bring a cohesiveness to your piece. So interview your client. That's always very, very important in the design process, so you guys can be on the same page and kind of know what's happening. So in the case of this assignment, really think about how you can kind of interview your artist to really get the feel of who they might be. Okay, so next thing to consider. So we have, remember, think about fonts, think about layout, think about overall style. So how we're going to think about that is really interview our artist. And then once we jump into the design process, we're going to really want to think about visual hierarchy. So when I say visual hierarchy, does anything pop into your minds? And again, if you're watching via video, just think about it. Visual hierarchy, does that mean anything? If you're here, you can type a response. But does anything come from that? Okay, so we have what we want people to look at first. Yep. Well, let me not say yes quite so quickly, but yeah. So basically, kind of the overall visual flow. So visual hierarchy. Here's another one of our great definitions. Refers to the arrangement or presentation of elements in a way that implies importance. So in other words, visual hierarchy influences the order in which the human eye perceives what it sees. This order is created by the visual contrast between forms in a field of perception. So basically, hierarchy is the visual ordering of things, kind of the way you set up your document so that people's eye can scan. And if you notice visual contrast, so this is going back to the big four principles of design: contrast, repetition, alignment, proximity. So all of those are used in very key ways to kind of communicate hierarchy and to communicate what's happening overall in a composition. So what this means in a business card is that you really want to figure out what is most important and what you want people to see first, and then design accordingly. So in a business card, probably not going to come as a shocker to anyone, but generally the most important thing that is present is the person's name. So for you guys, when you're designing, well, for all of us when we're designing, we really want to figure out how we can make the name of the artist themselves really be the thing that is the first thing that is seen, is the thing that we want people to look at first. As has been written. But yeah, just kind of how can we use things like our font, use things like our color, and ultimately use things like our composition to really orient our viewer toward that. So key for visual hierarchy is really thinking about what you want your viewer to see first, and how you want the composition to kind of unfold for them. So what's first, what's next, etc. And then key ways you do that, really with color to kind of draw your eye in, and then with overall composition, so being mindful about your empty and your full spaces, so that when someone looks at your piece, they kind of know how to navigate through it. So color and composition. Okay, so how does color work in compositions? I think this is our final slide, and then we're going to jump into the jump online and look at some museums. But yeah, so color is primarily, well, it does lots and lots and lots of things, but we're going to primarily talk about three things that color really does, which will all again turn back into business card design. So first thing is that color really creates mood. So as we were talking about with the color wheel, what the mood is of a piece that's a visual design piece really is kind of most impacted by the color, because the color has that sort of ambient, subconscious appeal to it. So it really creates mood. So you really want to think, what is the mood of this artist? What is then, therefore, the mood going to be of this card? So number two, color really defines a focal point. So if you're thinking, wait, focal point, what? The focal point is really the kind of the important thing on the card. So the focal point is essentially kind of the point of visual hierarchy. So it's what the visual hierarchy is pointing to. Visual hierarchy points to the focal point. So you can see how it kind of directs your eye that way. And then along with that, it really guides your eye. So it uses the composition itself to be a bit like, kind of like a roadmap to guide your eye through, and to just, show your viewer how they should be approaching, and how they should be kind of integrating and becoming aware of what you're producing. So color creates mood, defines a focal point, and then guides the eye through the composition, through how it's used. So let's get out of here and get back into the classroom, so we can take a look at how this might play out in the course of the assignment. All right, so do a quick read of the background. So choosing a color scheme is often one of the most challenging aspects of creating a design piece. Yes to that. Combining colors together in a way that attracts attention, conveys an appropriate message, and is unexpected enough to be memorable takes practice and much trial and error. That said, there are many places where you can look for color scheme inspiration. In this assignment, we will look at how artists in past historical contexts have used color combinations in their own visual narratives to define visual composition and convey emotion. We can see an example of how color defines composition in Vermeer's classic 1665 painting, Girl with a Red Hat. I think we're going to see a girl with a red hat if we click on the link. Oh, yeah, there's color. Look at instant focal point. Where is it? It's not, oops, let me get my spotlight. It's not over here. It's not over here. Nobody's caring about the fact that there's like vines or something on the wallpaper. It's clearly the red hat, focal point. And look at this is a super cool thing too. When you get to, let's try my thing here. When you look at this compositionally, her hat is like the perfect size too to just keep on drawing you back into her face. And her lips are, I would say, a tint of the hat itself. Ah, genius, it's being repeated. So your eye like can't help but keep on being drawn back. Even the lines in the background composition, everybody's drawing you to her. She's the main event type thing. And the cheeks, yeah, exactly. It's a fest of tints that are happening here, which is so cool because once you have language for it, you can see it, and then you cannot just see it and say, hey, that looks kind of the same. You can see it and say, oh my gosh, it looks the same because it is the same. And it's, just a variation on it. So super cool. And the other thing too, I mean, this and essentially this is the one like warm colored thing in this sea of blue and kind of beige background. And so it again really pops out at it. Let's see, the color of her jacket seal even lends to being muted by her hat. Yeah. Oh, one thing that might come up in the assessment, and again, this is covered in the course material, so it's there as well. But warm colors tend to advance, so they tend to jump out at you more. And then cool colors tend to recede. And this is, again, extremely apparent in this picture because you can see that her hat is like totally jumping out at you. And then the rest of the painting itself is kind of receding into the background. So warmth advances, cool colors tend to recede. So again, good thing to just file away if you happen to see that question in a quiz setting. Okay, so color defines composition. Vermeer uses a bright red hat to frame and set apart the features of his main subject. The contrast of the red against the dark background grabs attention and guides the eye through the canvas. We can see an example of how color conveys emotion in Picasso's 1901 painting, Woman with Folded Arms. Again, this is from the blue period. Whew. Doesn't she look so cold? Yeah, and I mean, everything about this, it's the same color. If you look at, oops, sorry, I'm going to have the wrong things. It's not really all that different from the color scheme in The Girl with the Red Hat, but because it lacks the red hat and it just is all playing in these very cold, these very cool colors, very cold colors, it's, a completely different feel. Imagine if the woman with crossed arms was wearing a red hat. Ooh, how would that change things? Would it change things? Yeah, I don't know. It would certainly add a different color. Let's see, there's still contrast in her face. Yeah, Yeah, for sure. Just with the whites and things, but you can see almost, and I don't know if this is, oops, I don't know, it doesn't get any bigger. Um, yeah, there's like a little, I feel like there's a little purple in the background. So there's like slight warmth, but it's overall such a, yeah, a little green. Yeah. And she definitely looks a little green herself. But yeah, interesting stuff to see, just how color conveys these different feelings and these different emotions. And I think in many ways, even though we're not looking at this in person, like when you look at it with a backlit screen, it's almost even it comes alive even more because it's so it's so powerful. See, her forehead is really drawing my attention. Yeah, so here's the. Let me not draw in such a large line, but here's kind of the focal point. Moving into. Yeah, I do feel like if you kind of squint and look at it, that is something too that pops out. So cool. Art, I tell you, it's a great thing. All right, so Picasso uses various shades of cool blues to create a feeling of deep sadness and depression. This feeling is echoed by the posture of his subject and gives the painting a deep melancholy and heavy feeling. Just as Newton viewed the impact of passing white light through a prism and observing the colors that emerged, so too you can use the tools of Illustrator as your quote-unquote prism to see what dominant colors will emerge when considering past artists and art movements. Then you will use the color schemes that emerge to design a business card for each of the 3 artists that you choose. Your goal is to be inspired by each artist's unique use of color in the overall composition and incorporate that compositional usage into your own color scheme. So we're going to get out our Newton prisms, take some pictures, fracture them apart, and then use those fractured beams of color to see what we can make, see how we can create. All right. And it's interesting, it says you can use Illustrator, and the prompt actually says use InDesign. So whatever you want is fine. I would say just don't use Photoshop, but InDesign or Illustrator is fine for this one. All right, so for this assignment, create 3 business cards for historic artists using color schemes for each drawn directly from their painting. So first, visit the digital archives of the Metropolitan Museum of Art via this handy link. So this is the Metropolitan Museum, which is in New York City. If you want to go to a different museum, like if you live in close proximity to another big museum and you want to use their collection or whatever as well, that's fine with me. I know that this is kind of a cool thing that's happened in the last couple of years, is many museums, like larger museums, have digitized their collections. So like the Art Institute of Chicago has a collection you can search digitally. One that's really cool, which I'll post to announcements as well. Hewitt Museum is the Cooper Hewitt Museum. And definitely worth a browse. This is the Cooper Hewitt Design Museum, and so their focus is on design, and they have just like crazy cool stuff to browse and all sorts of things. And what's really cool is search. I guess that's not really cool. It's a search box. No, but they have, when you do searches, well, this is the object of the day, so they'll show you an object from their collection, but you can search by like color scheme, you can search by poster, you can search by whatever. So it's just a really cool thing, and they have lots and lots of graphic design. So I like the Cooper Hewitt. I like the Museum of Modern Art, or this one, the Metropolitan, but the Cooper Hewitt's kind of more my favorite. So just wanted to give you guys that one as well and get that out there. And again, I'll put this in the in the announcements so you two can kind of look around as well. Okay. Yeah, it's like, what is this? Who knows? An illustrated storybook. This describes the woodland adventures of two acorn children who are swept away by autumn winds. What? Like, it's so crazy and so cool. And then you can see, illustrations and whatever. So Cooper Hewitt, cooperhewitt.org. Yeah. They meet little gnomes. Apparently there's also a winter version of it. Yeah. So design, I tell you, you never know where it's going to take you. It reminds you of Fantasia. Yeah, it does look like that. Speaking of color again. Okay, so let's go back to the Metropolitan. But all that to say, you could use basically any sort of museum-y space that you want to, and it mentions it mentions eras in art history, and so I'm pretty free if you find something that you like and it's not a painting. If you want to go with that as well. So important things you need to note when you're as you're browsing, when you're thinking about what you're going to choose as your kind of inspirational document, kind of who your artist is going to be that you're going to interview, and who's going to hire you, essentially. A couple things to note is that you will need a name, and so for a lot of the stuff, especially in the Metropolitan, if you get old, like this thing, a pair of clappers, don't choose this because it doesn't have a name. So you really want something that has a name associated with it. Like these shoes are super cool and they're made out of silk and leather. Like, love it. But don't choose these as your inspiration because they don't have a name. So just kind of keep that in mind. So you will need a name for someone. And, choose something too that also has a little bit of color in it. So you will be doing a color palette, so you want to kind of do something that has color. So that's nice. Gerard David, good one. And again, just kind of a disclaimer as you're searching these sites, this is art, so you may see things that are a little not quite so PG, but for the sake of art, it's okay. Look at that, that's so cool. Well, now this one has a name, so you could use, if you want to use the blouse, that could work. All right, so you can search just on their homepage. I know it's constantly changing. Or if you want to look like artist, show only highlights. If you want to do a search of like paintings. Ooh, that's kind of cool. Wow. Who knows what these things are? I have no idea. A great Indian fruit bat. So you can search however you want to. Just find things that, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, find things that have a bit of color, and again, that do have a name that's associated with them. And you can feel free to be as crazy as you want to in what you're finding. Like I said, it doesn't really matter. It's kind of whatever speaks to you. So it also says in the assignment that 3 items from 3 different art history movements. I'm okay with it, just as long as there's some variation. Like if every item that you choose is, navy blue and yellow, kind of, be a little bit more inventive. But you could also, if you want to just grab these guys, copy, paste, see what might happen. So that's kind of interesting. That's really interesting. Yellow. This is wild. Yeah, so you guys know how to search, so just have fun. Have fun and see what you can find. Let me get out of constructivism. Get back to where I was headed before. Let's look at American art. All right, now you're going to see that I just love looking at stuff. So we'll pick the first one I see that I feel connected to. All right, so when you find your work, see if it speaks to you, see if you're feeling it, and then just learn a little bit about who did it, what it looks like, that sort of thing. And then what you're going to want to do is download it. So for most of these, they should be public domain, and you should be able to just click download and then see the picture, and then do like a control click or a right click or drag it to your desktop, whatever that might be, and you save image to downloads. And that's another cool thing, is that a lot of these museums have digitized their collections and made high resolution versions of them available for the public, like it's public domain. And it's so cool. Like, you could go to like New York City and see this on display. But if you can't get to New York City for whatever reason, or you just don't want to get to New York City, like you can still see the picture, and it's a good high quality, it's a good high quality picture of it, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so you can read a little bit if you want to, if there happens to be something. I can stay with this forever. There are more and more colors that are coming. Yeah, I know. I'm totally there too. And I was actually in Maine in the spring, and I fell in love with it. So when I see this, I'm like, oh, that looks like Maine. I want to go put my raincoat on and, have some chowder. Yeah. Let's see. A nor'easter is a storm of exceptional violence and duration. When Homer first showed this canvas in 1895, it included two men in foul weather gear crouching on the rocks below a smaller column of spray, even though the painting was well received and purchased. Homer reworked it to powerful effect. Wow, so there used to be people there. Oh, who knew? Okay. So anyway, they all won't have that kind of part to it, but it's kind of cool when they do. And it's also cool to just like look at all of this stuff. So, look at things that are related, look at the timelines, what that looks like. Here's related objects. Super cool. Like you could choose all paintings of this by the same artist. I would be fine with that, because these all look totally different. So, well, relatively different. Cool. All right. So we downloaded our picture. So next thing we're going to do, and this is kind of important, create an 11 by 17 document in InDesign and place each image onto a separate page with 3 empty squares next to it. Using the eyedropper tool, pull out color swatches of the 3 most dominant colors and fill in each square, and add these new colors to your swatches panel. So I'm going to open up InDesign, and already got it open conveniently. Okay, and 11 by 17. And like I said previously, if you want to do this in, 17 inches by 11, if you want to do this in Illustrator, that's fine as well. So the main thing that we need, kind of the heart of what we're doing right now, is just finding color swatches, and that we're going to then use in our business cards. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, it just really bothers me when I do facing pages and I'm not laying out a book. So it's just one of those weird things. I had to get rid of that before it showed up again. Okay, so we have our document open. Final thing I would say doing right away, because Adobe products are finicky at best, is just save this. So I'm just going to grab this guy, copy, go into InDesign. So even though there's nothing on my document yet, I always feel like just save it right away, and that way if anything happens, you have a record of it you know you did something. Okay, so we have our 11 by 17 document. It's saved. What I'm going to do now is just place my file, and I'm actually going to just stop sharing for 1 second, mostly because my file is in my downloads, and I know that I was just downloading my student population list, so we don't want to have that. Okay, so let's share screen and get back to it. Okay, so I linked, so I downloaded my picture, and as you can see, it's a little bit large, but that's okay. I'm just gonna make my frame smaller and then use my direct selection tool and then shrink down my image. And remember, anytime you're doing image manipulations and sizing, you want to make sure that you are holding down your Shift key so that you don't accidentally distort your picture, especially when it's an art piece. You don't want to distort it. So it doesn't really matter how big your picture is. Just get it so you can have a good, let's say that works for me. Okay, and then we're going to do just a couple. I believe we're going to do 3. Is that it? Great. Use pull color. Oh, 3 most dominant colors. Okay. So we're going to grab our rectangle tool and just make 3 rectangles. And option click drag. Option click drag. And then we're going to select our first rectangle, grab our eyedropper tool. It's important though that we want just our regular eyedropper. We don't want the color theme, even though this is advanced color theory, so the color theme might be kind of nice, but we don't want it. We want just regular eyedropper. And so with our box selected, so you can see the little anchor points, our regular eyedropper, we're just going to click somewhere on the picture. And it says the 3 most dominant, kind of visually dominant colors. I would say even whatever your 3 favorite colors are in the picture, kind of the colors that you feel like are moving the composition forward. So making you look at the composition, making you feel engaged, just that are kind of standing out to you. And also, you're going to be creating a business card with these colors. So kind of keep that in mind too. Like what colors are you liking, and do you see yourself working with a bit in the future? So I like this kind of rusty color. If you grab something and you're like, I kind of like it better on the screen, you can always zoom in a bit more and grab it again. Maybe that kind of brown color. That's kind of cool. Well, no, I think I like it. I like that one better. Okay, and then select one again, eyedropper, and I kind of want this brown. Yeah, I like it. Kind of tumultuous in many ways. Okay, and then because I'm a designer, so it bothers me that these are the wrong, kind of the wrong width. I'm going to just extend this and make it look like my boxes are visually the same size as the composition. Okay, so there's one, and we're just going to do that. We'll do that one more time just to make sure everybody's clear on how to do it. So I have my first page, just going to create a new page, and I'll buzz through the, I won't browse as much, let's say that. Let's go with Natural Bridge Bermuda. And once again, I'm fine if you do similar stuff. They don't have to be super different. But look at how pretty that is. I wonder if, I think that's like a little person too right here. Didn't say anything. Nope. Nothing except that it's not on view. Okay, so we're going to download again. Wait, is that a person or is that a... Who knows? Okay, save my jazz. Let's just save it to my desktop. Okay, and then come back to our InDesign file place. And grab our picture and then click and drag to get it into our composition. Let go. Oh, so cool. I love that blue. Yeah. And I'm going to be completely intrigued by what this thing is in the corner because it is one of kind of the dominant visual colors. All right, so again, just click and drag, and we're going to need three swatches. 1, 2, 3. Make them more the same size. Okay, and then select your box, grab your eyedropper, and then select what colors you feel like are most impactful in the composition. And you'll see, make sure you have stroke and fill sorted out. I was just thinking, where did that show up to? But it actually is the fill, or I'm sorry, is the stroke, so I just want to swipe it that way. Right, second one, eyedropper, gotta grab that red. And then second one, eyedropper, or third one, or other eyedropper. And what to do, maybe it's green. Oh, that looks like brown. Again, if you don't like it, just grab it and switch it out. Okay, one final time, I promise, since you're like, she takes forever. Okay, so that's interesting, kind of two that are a little bit the same. All right, so I'm going to save this, and then final step is we're actually going to create one more file in InDesign, and this is going to be for the business cards themselves. So look at these color schemes, though, so cool. Okay, so we're going to go File, New, Document, and these are going to be, this is normal, quote unquote normal, business card size, which is 3.5 inches by 2 inches. And you can be, if you want to be vertical, so it would be portrait orientation. If you want to be landscape, it really doesn't matter. It's kind of completely up to you. Think about, though, if you're interviewing your artist, what sort of card would they like? And if you really feel like they would like a square card, go for it. Like, make it 3 inches square. Like, that's totally a thing. So whatever your artist interview tells you is what you should go with as far as orientation and such. So my artist is going to tell me he would like something horizontal because it kind of reminds him of a seascape. And that's kind of what he's really into, apparently. All right, so one other thing that we're going to do, which I did not do, is just make sure you add bleed. And even though we're not doing these as things that are going to actually be printed, because they could be printed, because they are theoretically a print design object, we do want to make sure that we are, just putting all the pieces in place. So just make sure you have a bleed, kind of good practice in that way. All right, so final thing we're going to do is just grab and save this one more time so that we don't lose it. And this is going to be assignment 1_2. So you can grab that and save. And if you're like, boy, she must be really paranoid, I am, because I've lost so many things. I've had students lose so many things, and it's just such a hassle. And it's totally preventable if you save. Okay, so we're going to come back here, grab our, which one do I want to do? I guess I'll do this guy. Grab our swatches, just copy, and it says add them to your color swatches panel. You can actually just put them into your document. I think I feel like for me that's a little bit easier, but whatever you're comfortable doing is fine, because you can always grab them grab them from here. Okay, so let's look at the picture itself. And the idea for this assignment is to see how your chosen artist uses color, and then how that might inform how you use color as you're designing their business card. So again, we talked about in our session the importance of kind of interviewing your artist. So as you're looking at your painting and as you're kind of thinking about doing this fictitious artist interview, a couple questions I would encourage you to consider are, when I look at this, what is the most visually dominant color? What do I feel like he used? This is Winslow Homer. What did he use to really build visual hierarchy into what's going on? So how is he directing my eye? How is he kind of telling me where to look? When I look at this, what do I see first? What do I see next? What's kind of like the hidden afterthought? Ask yourself those questions and kind of consider what answers you might be hearing as you're looking at the piece. And if you're like, I really don't know, it's total gut reaction. Like, you don't need to, there's not one right answer with this. It really is what you see, and what you see is then what you will design from. So don't feel like you have to hear something. You will hear something regardless, just by looking at this. So when I look at this, the thing that really pops out to me is this darker blue color. So it's this top color swatch that I picked, and kind of why it's standing out to me is I see it. Let me get a color that we'll actually be able to see it with, maybe yellow. Is that I see it in this middle, it's kind of this whole middle section of the painting. And so it feels like it's very present where my eye is always going. And it also feels like all of these other objects are kind of navigating me into this space in the middle. So like this wood beam or rock beam or whatever this is, these kind of stair steps, everything is always kind of causing my eye to go into this section. And so for me, this feels like this color in particular is the one that's kind of like the most visually dominant. And then these two colors are nice, but these two colors are more kind of accent colors overall. So that's kind of how I'm interpreting this picture as regards to color. So this is going to be the dominant. So this is going to be like the 1, and then these will be like 2 and 3. As far as how they're being used. So the main event, the main actor, the star, is going to be that blue color. And then the other 2 colors are going to kind of support in different ways. So the other thing that you want to consider as you are kind of interviewing your artist is really bring up topics of font. So as we said in our session, in a business card, it's such a tiny thing, and font is the kind of main kind of secondary visual after color that you're going to take in. So really think about what your artist might choose as far as a font. So for this picture, what I see is like this kind of fluidity of the water. I see lots of nature. I see that, I would guess that this artist would like natural looking stuff. I also see that this picture is a little bit blurry, so let's see if we can get high quality display. That could be a bit better. Oh yeah, way better. So I feel like nature, water, fluid. These rocks feel like they have like a little bit of like a distressed kind of patina to them. So the way the purple is on top of it, it has like this really strong textural element. So when I'm saying these words in my head of like nature, distressed, organic kind of things, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, okay, we're not going to do like a Times New Roman. We're not going to do a really proper serif, because those things feel too like stuffy and like indoors to me. I think that Winslow Homer wants something that's, kind of more like rugged and wild, and a little bit more like, just has some more kind of like texture and organic and kind of maybe some age to it, maybe some worn away. organic. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So something that's kind of in that general sphere. So I'm going to come back to my second document, and I'm just going to open up. I'm going to type his name first. So I'm going to make a pretty much blanket statement that everybody is going to have their artist's name kind of be the biggest thing on their card. And maybe it won't be, it doesn't have to be, but 9 times out of 10 on a business card, the name is kind of the main event. So I'm going to open up my character panel. Okay, so Minion Pro, not so much Winslow Homer, because it feels very proper. And although this feels like this could be used for an artist, like I don't know which artist it could be, but I have a feeling there's somebody that this could work with. But yeah, so the cool thing about InDesign, remember, you click on your character panel and you have the world at your fingertips, because you see the previews of everything that you have loaded on your machine. And another cool thing, we won't get into it this session because time is already moving along. But you guys have Typekit that you can actually download fonts from as well. And you get a certain number of free ones every month with Adobe. So check that out if you haven't been. Super cool and super fun. Okay, so let's put this up here. So I'm thinking rugged. I'm thinking organic. I was thinking Milka aged. If you've been with me in DES 344, you're probably like, not again, Lisa. This is like the font that sponsored Advanced Print Production, because I downloaded it from Typekit and loved it. But I actually do really like the way it looks kind of worn away. But I don't think the font itself is a good fit as far as shape. It feels a little too modern. I want something with this feel, but in a less less like 1970s feel, I guess, if that makes sense. Let's see the checkbox. Brought to you by the typeface. Yeah. Yeah, it's like Sesame Street or something. All right, well, I won't. I'll just look for a little bit. Oh, this one might be nice. Ooh, that's kind of cool. I kind of like it because it's got the rusted feel. So you guys look around. The important thing is that you are thinking about what kind of font really has the feel of your artist. And there's a lot of there's a lot of interesting, especially script fonts, that I feel like could have some interesting application as well. This is not one that we're going to use, but this is kind of cool. Actually, maybe that is one we're going to use, because he was from the 1800s. Was he? Was he not? Let's check. Oh yeah, 1836. Huh. I kind of like it. It looks a little old schooly, and it's kind of worn away. It's like a stamp. Ooh. The Goldsmith vintage. I like it. Okay, so we're going to go with that one. So now, now that we have our font, what I'm going to do again is just bring my look at my color scheme. And I said that the blue kind of felt like the most visually dominant color. So I'm actually going to make my font be this color. So I'm going to just select it all. And I got some really wonky spacing. So I'm just going to update that slightly. I won't go crazy with my kerning right now because that's another fix. But you guys can go crazy with your kerning because you don't have people watching you. Okay, so we have his picture. His name is going to be here. And then, think too about your composition of your business cards. There's just such a small amount of space, and there's only so many places and spaces where you can put things. But I would say try a couple different spots and just see what you like. Okay, so artist name, title, website, and email. Okay, artist name, title. So his title, we're going to say artist. And think also how you want to use your fonts. I'm just going to put all of my fonts or all of my words for the moment in this font. So in Goldsmith Vintage. I can guarantee I'm not going to keep it that way because I think as we make this, doesn't have a dot. That's another reason why we're not going to do that. But as we make this, as we put everything together and then we have to make some of these smaller, I think it's going to be just too much font. So info@artistname.com, info@winslowhomer.com. And yeah, this is a great decorative font, but it doesn't have characters, so that in itself is problematic. Okay, so think about as you're building out your card, so you've got your primary font. Well, I have my primary font that's, establishing visual hierarchy and kind of drawing your eye in. Think about what fonts would go with it, kind of what would be good supporters. So I'm thinking what I want is something that's not very fancy, something that feels a bit more simple and plain, and something especially that's going to work at smaller sizes, because I'm going to need to shrink down, his website, his email address, to something that's fairly small to make sure that you can still see it. So what I'm looking for is something that is readable in a small space, and that feels fairly simple, because again, I don't want to distract from my main event, which is my other font. And I know what I want to get to. It's down here in the L's. I want to do, not that one. Oh man, I don't want to do Letter Gothic. I want to do League Gothic. Ooh, do I want to do League Gothic? That looks so big and a little bit too much. Let's see, are we doing front and back? You are not doing front and back, but if you want to do front and back, you can. So, and I actually feel like front and back is good, because in business cards, I feel like the back is like such unused real estate. So, why not? Yeah, why not do it? It's getting printed anyway. I really don't like this, so we're not going to do League Gothic. Let's do Franklin Gothic book. Oh yeah, that's better. Info at. Okay, so we're gonna grab this guy and here's this. Okay, so we have his name, we have his title, and we have some contact info. And now we get to figure out how we are going to show them. So if you're wondering why I'm going back and forth between this basic working preview to kind of something that's like the print preview, it's just because I like shifting my workspace a bit. And the easy way to do that, if you're not aware, is just hitting your W key. So when you have W, it'll kind of get rid of your artboard. Well, it'll hide your artboard. It won't get rid of it. And then when you hit W again, you'll see it. So it's just nice, I think, to move back and forth, because when I see all these lines, it distracts me. And so when I, design this way, it's easier to see. But I do like to keep, aware of what's out there as well. Okay, so we have our name, we have our title, we have our contact info. So this is where you get to think about your visual hierarchy. So name, I'm going to say, is still the most important part. So I'm going to put it up here. And then I'm going to have his title slightly below, and I'm going to make it let me say maybe, oh no, I don't have an and sign. So say I need an ampersand for that. I was going to do artist and painter. Maybe I'll do painter. A-I-N-T-E-R. Maybe I'll do landscape painter. Okay, and because this is second, this is kind of a second importance thing, I'm going to just dial it back in size. And I'm also going to try giving it a different color and just see how that works. Kind of like it. Okay, move that down. And maybe move this over. Yeah. Okay, and then I'm going to bring in these elements. And it's very important when you're designing a business card, just think of your alignment. So you really want to line up what you're doing. And you'll see here that I have, landscape painter and then his contact info. They're lined up together on the left side. So kind of just keep that in mind. And the reason we want to line up is that you want it to feel like an even flow, like your eye knows where it's going. And I'm just going to decrease the tracking, maybe open it up just slightly. Looks like that was at 30. So keep it this way as well. Okay, now this is the this is the least important, but you also want to have it still be readable. So I'm going to put it in my third color and just see how that looks. And if it doesn't look great, then I can always go back and switch it up a bit. So I kind of like it. All right, so you guys have the color schemes that you're pulling from, but don't feel like that's the only colors that you can use. If you want to use like a little bit of gray or a little bit of black and white or something like that, feel free to. Just don't interject a color that's completely absent from your picture. Like, I'm not going to put some hot pink in here because that wouldn't feel Winslow Homery. Just be very mindful of kind of what you're doing and how you're using the different aspects. Let's see, I feel like you could emboss a wave in the right corner. Ooh, yeah, I was just thinking that too. Like, now I was thinking, now that we've got the basic type in here, like this is it essentially. How can we then play with what's going on, how we're putting this together? Where can we put some decorative bits and pieces? How can I do something that feels a little bit like a wave? Like, what might that look like? And I have no idea, but I kind of want to play with it now because I think it would be really cool. But yeah, so all that to say, when you guys get to this point, feel free to think about how you can kind of creatively interpret what's going on and what's happening in this piece. So we're going to start here, and again, go back and forth to your painting that you're looking at. So this is like, okay, it's kind of building, and then it has like this big crash of something that's happening. I really like the idea that this corner could get rounded. Maybe we're going to, and I don't think I can actually round my artboard, which is a shame, but we can round a rectangle if we put it there. That would be just one, or that would be all of them. We could go to object and corner options, and you guys can feel free to do this however you want to. Can we do a dotted line? Okay. Yeah, you could for sure. Sorry, I'm just seeing. Okay, I think this one corresponds to as shown in the blue box. That one corresponds to this one. Okay, let's unlink. And okay, there it is. Yay! That's kind of cool. Or what you could even do, add viewing directions within comments of the assignment. Yes, for sure. I was thinking, what you could do, which might make even more sense, is if you want to do something fancy. Ruby's giving her idea. What you could do is just put it on a larger document. Okay, I think she's done. She likes it too. Yeah, she does. So you could put it on a larger document, and then you could play around with like the shape and what it looks like. So I am just on a, this is a piece of 8.5 by 11. So this is like letter size paper. And so you could see the front and the back. The only thing is if you put it on letter size paper, and I almost did this, there's this temptation that like, oh, it's so tiny, let me make it bigger. Don't resist the temptation to make it bigger. This is just to kind of show off, you know, what's happening in different ways. And actually, I really like this. So I would, oops, that at 0.5, I would continue to play with this. And I like the idea that it's going to have something that kind of cuts through what that like wavy feeling could look like. Could I do it with a pencil? Yeah, probably not. Maybe it's a little bit like a wave. Yeah, I don't know. I had to play with it a bit more. But yeah, you guys can play with it because this is your assignment, and it's, as you can see, it's really cool, and it's kind of fun to just see, you know, how these things might morph, and how these things might transform. I'm trying to think of what other shapes could I do? I don't know. And you could even do something cool, like if you wanted to make it double-sided. You know, if you want to put the picture as like the back, or if you even want to grab your color scheme and you know, create something kind of abstracted with it, might be kind of cool as well. It's interesting because I'm suddenly feeling like I want to do this in Illustrator, not not InDesign, because I think I could do some easier stuff in interesting ways in Illustrator. So if you're kind of feeling like InDesign is a little is kind of a little limiting for what your creative vision is, especially since I want to use the new Illustrator pencil tool, um, which I think I could use to make something kind of great and like a wave. By all means, go for it. Don't be stuck in InDesign world just because that's what the assignment says. I don't really care what you use to do this. I mean, I do to some extent, but as long as you're playing in the Adobe Sandbox, I'm cool with whatever that might be. 60, see what happens. Ooh, this is kind of cool. But yeah, so anyway, kind of play, and this is like the modern, like crashing movements of stuff using the. Now is when my client is probably like, what are you doing, Lisa? No, I don't want this at all. Or is it kind of genius? I don't know. But yeah, so you can play around with the flip side. What I'm really going to is, uncreative as it sounds, what I'm really going to be marking you on is how you're using the color scheme to overall establish kind of visual hierarchy, and how you're being inspired by the painter themselves. So it's going to be a lot of like, does it look readable? Are you doing a good job establishing kind of what you should see first, what you should see next? Does it make sense? Do you have really good alignment? I'm going to be kind of a stickler for that because I think that's that important. So it's going to be, you know, those different elements. So, you know, if you're like, oh no, I don't know what to do on the back, if it's stressing you out, don't do it. But if you feel like it's a fun place to play around, then by all means, you know, jump in and play around, and see what kind of cool stuff you can come up with. Yeah, I like it. All right. Well, when you are all finished with everything, oops, sorry about that. I just dropped something. When you're all finished with everything, we're going to just save both of these, and we're going to export them. So File, Export, and we're going to export it as PDF print. So Save, Export, and then as well for the card, File, Export, and Save, and Export. And then you should have your PDFs. Here are mine. here and here. And then we're just going to make a new folder, which is DES314 it's 1 first last, and then drop your PDFs in there. And you don't have to turn in your InDesign files, but please save them because you never know, what sort of tweaks or whatever you might want to make. Or if you want to, turn this into a mock-up and actually use this as a portfolio item, that too might be an idea. So save your native files, whatever program you're using for your natives. All right, and then we're just going to Control-click and compress to make a zip. And then the zip is going to be what you're going to turn in. So I think that, that just about wraps things up for us. So if you guys are watching via video and you have any questions, or if you're here and you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Again, you want to find your artist and the picture, and then you want to pull your color scheme out of it, and you can use Illustrator, you can use InDesign. It doesn't really matter which program you work in. And then you're going to make your business card. Remember, it's 3.5 by 2 is average. If you want to be not average, that again is okay. Just whatever your artist would want. We want to keep our artists happy. So think about that too. And then you're going to design your business card, thinking about visual hierarchy, thinking about color, and then export it and go from there. So hopefully you guys have fun with this, have fun browsing the museums, and have a good time making these things. All right, well, thanks guys for a great first session. Great first week, I guess. Second session of the first week. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of the week, a happy Halloween, lots of treats and sugar and such. And I will look forward to seeing you next week. All right, take care, everyone.